In a world where left is up and right is apparently wrong, two souls make sense of it all, or at least have fun trying. Gear up, friends, for Chicken and the Dog. Welcome to another episode of Chicken and the Dog. I am the dog, and with me, as always, is the guy that is going to help us better understand the craziness of the CFP, the chicken. What up, dog?
I think to understand crazy, you gotta be a little crazy yourself.
Yeah, and you fit the mold.
That doesn't hurt.
No, it does not. But before we get to that college football playoff bracket, because there's so much to talk about, before we get there, just a couple things. Happy early signing day for recruiting. Yeah. As a Georgia fan, not happy. Our 5-star, number 3 in the country quarterback that we thought could be the future in another 6 years, because that's how deep Georgia is, flipped his commitment to Vanderbilt. And, man, if I got to be honest with you, I don't blame the kid at all. He has maybe a shot to play next year. If he definitely doesn't have – Gunner's going to come back one more year. Then you got Puglisi right behind him for maybe 2 years. This guy's looking at 4 years from now getting the starting job. I understand that. I get it.
Well, and let's remember that while recruiting high school players is important, it is important to schools like Georgia who tend to retain those guys. It's also not the end of the world when a guy flips, because it's not out of the question that in a couple of years he might come back through the portal.
All roads lead back to Georgia. Sometimes.
I just meant anywhere. You know, it's a lot like that bad prom date. You only remember the good stuff. You don't remember the bad, and that's why you call her up several years later going, I wonder what Susie's doing.
Yeah, poor Susie.
Poor Susie.
The other thing, I think we have to address it. The Lane plane has landed in Baton Rouge. And whether you like it, whether you love it, it doesn't matter. He's there.
He's there. And unless you were hiding under a rock these past several days, we couldn't announce it on the last show because it wasn't official yet. I think everybody knew what was happening. In fact, the Ole Miss fans in Oxford knew it well enough in advance to be there at the airport to help send him off, although they only lifted a finger. They didn't lift all of them. But yeah, if you didn't see this coming, then you just weren't paying enough attention. All indications were that he wanted to be able to stay and help out. Very gracious in his departure. You know, that meeting there at the airport with Marty Smith, where he was saying he wanted to be there, but he understood and he acquiesced to the wishes of the Ole Miss folks. But yeah, off to a new start in Baton Rouge. Good for Lane, good for the LSU Tigers, and we'll see what happens with everybody else.
Yeah. So are you saying that they gave him a one-finger salute?
Several of them, yes. There were multiple one-finger salutes. Oddly enough, nobody was trying to help with the luggage. It was just waving goodbye in their own special way.
Do you think he can afford someone to pack up his household goods? And
I think he's okay. I think he's got 2 men in a truck lined up, or maybe it's college hunks. I don't know, Dub. Maybe it's college hunks that's doing that job.
Maybe so. But look, all I can say is this. There's still so much chatter, and it's time to move on from Lane, and this is how I'm leading into this. There's so much chatter about he did this, and he didn't do this, and he said this, and whatever. Look, Ole Miss fans, and I am one. I think I'm more of a Lane Kiffin fan than necessarily an Ole Miss fan. But move on. The guy is gone. He did something at your program that you have never done before. Give the guy a little bit of props for that. And if he feels it's best interest for him and his family and his future to be at LSU, let him go and just move on from it. I
My grandmother
digress.
used to say, there's no use in crying over spilled milk. Let's just clean it up and figure out breakfast.
Are you talking like biscuits and gravy?
It's just breakfast. This doesn't need to be a dive deep into your appetite.
I was getting hungry when you said that. It's like gravy. All right. The college football playoff bracket was released yesterday. And there's a lot of stuff in it, but I'm going to, before I go into all of them, the one thing I'm going to give hats off to the committee, and it was the best, and I mean, it was the best showing that I've seen from the committee to date, is they did not punish Ole Miss for losing their coach. I think that's fair. And their OC is leaving, but he's staying on until it's over. Charlie Weiss is going to come to LSU. That's already been announced, but he's staying on. But they didn't punish Ole Miss. And I think that's fair to the program. I think that's fair to the kids. It's one of the best moves I've seen them do.
Hope that it's an indicator that this committee is capable of learning.
Yes.
If you go back a few years, they penalized Florida State, an undefeated Florida State, from getting into the then 14 playoff because their starting quarterback was out. No way he was coming back to play. And that was the announcement that was made. This is why we left FSU out, because their quarterback got hurt. However you feel about that, whether you're already over it because it was that many years ago, whether you feel now it's justified because Florida State has been in constant turmoil since, that wasn't a legitimate reason to leave that team out of the playoffs. Hopefully that had its weight here in their decision to say, you know what, we're not going to step in that again. Ole Miss, you're in.
Yeah, not to chase that down that rabbit hole too far, but I think you made a great point. Hopefully they learn from that, because the Florida State Seminoles that year, they went 13-0. They won their conference championship, and their conference championship they won with their backup quarterback. I don't know how you left them out. We said this, God, many times. We saw Ohio State win a national championship with the third string quarterback, Cardale Jones. So, I don't know, man. I'm glad they did what they did. I hope that's like you said, I hope that's a clear sign that they've learned their lesson. But I also don't want the college football playoff committee to be influenced by certain schools or whatever. And there's another thing on here that proves to me that they didn't. And let's go ahead and go into what looks like currently who would be in the playoffs. Number 1, Ohio State. Number 2, Indiana. Number 3, Georgia. Number 4, Texas Tech. Number 5, Oregon. Number 6, Ole Miss. A&M dropped down to number 7. I think that's a great spot for A&M. I don't think any Aggies should be mad about that. Oklahoma stayed at number 8. Here's where it's interesting to me. Alabama jumped 1. They went from 10 to 9, and Notre Dame went from 9 to 10. And so with that being said, they're kind of, normally we always pick on the AP poll, the coaches poll, ESPN, the playoff committee about their love for Notre Dame. Well, they moved them down. They moved them down a spot to number 10. They're inside, but their eyes are behind them because they don't have to play this weekend. So I think that's very interesting.
Yeah, it is interesting. They're still showing a little bit of bias with some of the other big name schools. Okay, Miami is still out there knocking on the door. Let us in. Let us in. Even though personally, I don't feel that they've played well enough to end up with a spot. Texas is 9-3. Now I know that there's a lot of debate. One of their losses was to number 1 Ohio State at the beginning of the season. Vanderbilt had an historic season, and Vanderbilt sits a spot behind Texas right now. Just don't know how I feel about that. I think that the certain factory of a certain product on the West Coast is ranked entirely too high. They don't have a shot to get in. But number 16 on this ranking, when you went 9-3, not better than last year, but 9-3. I think that from everything that happened last year at the 9-3 congestion point, should have been another learning experience. And if you're 9-3, you don't belong in the top, I don't know, 17 teams. There's that much congestion at 10-2, and yet you've got teams that are 10-2 sitting behind several 9-3 schools. That makes no sense to me. I understand conference play. I understand interconference play, but wins are wins when you got to play 12 regular season games. That's where we're at. Make it make sense. Continue to iron out the wrinkles. You're doing better, but let's get the ironing board out.
Yeah, and they're always comparing this, strength of schedule, and I get strength of schedule. I think that has to be a factor, no doubt about that. But the other thing they're always comparing about is head to head, right? Head to head matchups. Who won this? Who won that? So forth and so on. When Miami played, Miami is sitting at number 12. They're outside looking in. Who did they beat? They beat Notre Dame. That's got the same record. Now, if if Miami was sitting at 9-3, I don't think Miami has an argument. But Miami is sitting at the same record as Notre Dame at 10-2. And they're outside looking in, and Miami's got the head-to-head. You make sense of that.
You can't, in all fairness. And Notre Dame, you talk about strength of schedule. One of the things that just really gets under my skin when we talk about strength of schedule is you've got no way of knowing that. You play in the SEC. Let's use Vanderbilt as an example. Okay, you play in the SEC, so your schedule for 8 games is locked. You're playing who you're going to play because that's your conference schedule. South Carolina was one of these outside looking in schools last season. So if you're Vanderbilt and you win that South Carolina game early in the year, which they did, that looks like a good win. However, South Carolina goes on to be a very unimpressive 4-8 school. How is that Vandy's fault? They just went out and won. That's what they were supposed to do, right? However, Notre Dame, as an independent, can pick and choose whoever they want to play on that schedule. Just a little bit of unequivalency there in the scales. They don't quite balance.
It just hit me. I had one of those light bulb moments. I know it's rare with the dog. Usually I'm just fun loving, licking things. Never mind. I'm not going to go there either. But I understand why they put number 16 at number 16 now. The Fighting Prophylactics. I get it. They're trying to make Notre Dame look better because Notre Dame plays them every year. Notre Dame beat them. They're trying to justify that spot where Notre Dame is at right now. And that's my opinion.
Yeah, it could be. It could be. And again, they're one of those 9-3 schools that are sitting ahead of some 10-2 schools. Virginia is a 10-2. Now, do I think that Virginia needs to be way up there in the rankings? No, I don't. But do I think that they should be above Southern Cal? Yes. I think most countries should be above Southern Cal. If you're not one of those, hey, we regard you as a terrorist organization, I think you belong above Southern Cal.
Not to get off track, but I want to move off track just for a brief second. Can you please explain to the audience why you have this deep hatred to the Fighting Prophylactic Southern Cal?
I went to the University of South Carolina, the USC, as we once said. And these little Nancy boys over on the West Coast decided to go all the way to the United States Supreme Court so that they could say that they were USC and we were not. Listen up, you little fruitcakes. We were a university before you were a state. You know, that old cliche, before you were a glimmer in your daddy's eye. Yeah, that's us. And you're the aftermath. You're we're Southern Cal. We play in the Pac-12, and now we play in the Big Ten. Whatever. Shut up. Get out of my way. We are USC. We are the USC. We own it. move.
That just happened.
Yes, it did.
Back to the playoffs. One of the things that, and you kind of alluded to this a little bit, I think it's very interesting. Last year, we were talking 9-3 teams. 9-3 teams, 9-3 teams, the 9-3 teams, right? They should be in. Who should be in? Who should be in? We're talking 10-2 teams now. And I don't think we could say that's going to be the norm moving forward. The SEC is going to a 9-conference game schedule next year. I think you're going to see some 9-3 SEC teams that are playoff worthy. I think it's going to shift year from year. You're going to see that move from year to year. But do I believe that it needs to be 16 teams at least? Yeah. And I think, ladies and gentlemen, I think that's what we're going to see next year. This is the last year of the 12-team playoff. If they don't come into an agreement, does it go back to 4? I don't know. That would be tragic.
Yeah, no, I don't think that they'll roll back to 4. I think that if they can't, if it's a stalemate and they can't figure this out, which, hey, it's the committee, that's possible. They'll hold at 12 for another couple of years, and then they'll come back and try and revisit it. The issue that you've got now is that it is going to be increasingly difficult, apparently, unless you're in the Big Ten, to go undefeated. We saw Texas A&M make a solid run at it all the way to the end of the regular season, and they got beat by Texas. Tragic for the Aggies to finish out the regular season that way. Not only did they lose their perfect year, but they lost a shot at the SEC championship with that loss. You've only got undefeated in the Big Ten, and it's an Ohio State and it's in Indiana. Again, say what you will about the strength of schedule. I'm not diving into that because you're in a conference, your schedule is what it is, but you're going to see fewer and fewer of those things happening. I think Ohio State, for example, would still be up at the top of the pack here had they lost their opener to Texas instead of that having gone the other way. I think you're still looking at an Ohio State team that maybe they're 11-1, maybe they're 10-2, depending on if Ryan Day would have been able to rebound and still beat Michigan. But yeah, I think the undefeated thing is going to dwindle, which is going to present us with more 11-1, more 10-2 records that we all have to fit into a 12 or 16 team slotted bracket.
Yeah. So we discussed the top 10. We didn't discuss the last 2 spots. And so the way this thing is played out, or the way that the committee the rules are set, is you have to give the top 5 ranked conference champions a playoff spot. In most years, you're going to say Big Ten, it's going to be your top 4 Power 4 conferences, the SEC, the Big Ten, the Big 12, and the ACC. That's going to be your norm. And then you're going to get one group of 5 in there. But this year, we may actually see 2 group of 5s in there. We have a shot of being no ACC team in this whatsoever, because there's none of them in the top 10 right now. Sitting at the highest ranked is number 12, Miami, but they're not in the championship game. You've got Virginia and Duke. Duke is 7-5, guys.
And
unranked. Right now, you have, get ready, Tulane at number 20. You have North Texas at 24, and you have James Madison at number 25. Guys, now North Texas and Tulane have to play each other. So one of them is going to get bumped out. Whether it's North Texas or Tulane, one of them is gone. James Madison, there's not another. If they win the Sun Belt Conference Championship, they're going to stay ranked. They're not going to move, right? So you could see if Virginia was to lose to Duke, and Duke has beat some good teams. They beat Georgia Tech this year, I believe. James Madison, you could have a James Madison / North Texas and Tulane in there, one of those, and no ACC team. That would be crazy.
It would be, but let me also offer this. And I'm not a Miami apologist, But I do think that even though Miami's not going to be playing for the ACC championship, that they are the best team in the ACC. They just slipped up a couple times because Carson decided to throw it to anybody but his guys. If you get Virginia as your conference champion into the playoffs, do we really think that the outcome is going to be that much different than if it's James Madison instead and with another group of five? Yeah, the ACC is just not strong enough right now to present us, again, outside of Miami, but you had one job, Beck, and you failed miserably. Outside of Miami, the ACC is not strong enough to present us, in my opinion, with a conference championship bracket spot holder that is really going to be a contender in this playoff. If Virginia wins, they're not a contender for the national championship. James Madison is not going to be a contender for the national championship. North Texas, Tulane, whomever, you're not going to be a contender for the national championship. The big boys have come to play.
I agree with that. Number 12, Miami. You said you believe that they're the best team in the ACC. I would agree with you 100%. Does Miami have a better shot at beating, or do they have a shot, period, of beating Ohio State, Indiana, Georgia, Texas Tech, Oregon, Ole Miss, A&M, Oklahoma, Alabama, or Notre Dame? Could they beat any of those teams? They already beat Notre Dame once.
I was going to say, they've already beaten Notre Dame. I think it'd be a fun game to watch against Oklahoma. I think a game against Texas Tech would be a good game between those two schools. And I think, honestly, again, so much of this just depends on which Carson Beck shows up. But he's got the experience. He's been in this position before. Now, he hurt his way out of it last year, but he's no stranger to big game atmosphere.
No.
He's no stranger to leading a team in a big game moment. I think he could give Ohio State a run for their money. Would Miami necessarily beat Ohio State? I don't know. But he could be knocking on the door of success with that for sure.
Indiana?
Yeah, I think that would be a good one too. I think most matchups would either be a push or favor Miami in a playoff outside of. I think Georgia would wipe the table with them. I think Alabama would probably outmuscle Miami. Oregon and Ole Miss, I'm just kind of torn. Ole Miss, obviously, we know what they've got going on now. Lane is gone. How's it going to work out? We'll see. We saw them play well in the Egg Bowl with the distractions of that saga. Who knows how it's going to play out during the playoffs? But I do think Miami would, for certain, be an exciting team to watch in the playoffs.
I do too. I think where they would struggle would be any team that's got a very complete defense. If you're solid in every area on defense, I think Miami will struggle with that. I think Carson Beck would struggle with that. You mentioned Georgia. I think that's one of Georgia's strengths. They don't have this, oh my God, elite backfield, but they're solid. They're not an A plus. They're an A or an A minus, right? Linebackers, defensive ends, the defensive front, all fall in that same category of they're not this flashiest, oh my God, look at these studs. They're just good. And I think Carson Beck would struggle against something like that. But I think you're right. I think Miami would have a shot at beating quite a few of these people. And I think the playoff committee needs to look at that. I think they have it wrong when they have Miami out and Notre Dame in. I think they have that wrong. That's the one thing I would say that's wrong. Now, you got 2 spots left. Virginia wins, they're in. Tulane wins or North Texas wins, they're in. BYU wins. BYU is outside looking in. BYU is sitting at number 11. And I think they have them probably in a good spot. They're 11-1. Their only loss is to Texas Tech, which is sitting at number 4. If a BYU beats Texas Tech in the Big 12 championship, you're not going to drop Texas Tech from 4 out. That's never going to happen. even though they would be an 11. They're not going to punish you that much. Everybody says, well, nobody's going to punish us for winning a conference championship game. Shut up. Yes, you will. Or for losing the conference championship. You watch. We're going to see it this weekend. There's no doubt about that. We're going to see it. BYU beats Texas Tech. BYU's got to get in at that point. Where does that leave Notre Dame?
Outside looking in. I think that is a big one right there. I think that pushes Notre Dame out if BYU secures a spot by beating Texas Tech. Because like you said, you're not going to drop a number 4 Texas Tech Red Raiders at what would then be 11-2 because they play an extra game. Notre Dame does not. Notre Dame sits.
All right. Same scenario, but Alabama loses to Georgia. Does Notre Dame stay in and Alabama jumps out? Everybody's saying, and we have Senior Chief and several other people, the Gooch, on a thread last night were saying there's no way Alabama with the loss to Georgia is out. And I'm thinking, yes, there is.
I think it is unfortunate, but yeah, I mean, they showed last year again, and it was the 9-3 question mark, but they're willing to look past Alabama for whatever reason. They're showing it here. They've got them at number 9 right now, which is kind of in that henpeck spot of, are you staying or are you going? If you want to stay, you better win on Saturday. You better take that conference championship home. And again, for the SEC anyway, it's probably the best thing if you want more schools in, right? Like Georgia's not falling out of it if they lose to Alabama, but Alabama would then stay in. I think that if Alabama falls and BYU wins, I think that maybe there's still opportunity for Notre Dame to drop out, but for certain, I think Alabama would fall and BYU would certainly climb up in there and possibly leave room for Miami to creep in as well.
I think you're absolutely right on that. Indiana, Ohio State, like I said, they've got to play each other. They're not going anywhere. Neither one of them is going to go anywhere. It doesn't matter how bad it is. There's just
if Indiana wins, they may just switch spots.
It's potential. Yeah, I mean, let's say Indiana wins by a field goal. Yeah, Indiana may go to 1 and Ohio State number 2. That definitely can happen. I think if Texas Tech loses, they'll be out. If BYU beats them, I think they'll fall out of the top 4 teams that get a bye. And that leaves room for a Georgia to stay in there, maybe even with the loss. And that definitely allows an Oregon to climb in to a bye week as well. But there's so many different things. I mean, another thing that I think, that the playoff committee got right is Oklahoma at 8 and Alabama at 9. If they would have said, we really want Alabama in, let's move them into a more secure spot to that number 8, that would have been wrong because Oklahoma has the head-to-head.
Oklahoma has the head-to-head. That's a hurtful loss right now for Alabama. I mean, you only lost 1 in the conference, and it had to be Oklahoma. It stings, but yeah, you didn't really have a choice. It's what made sense.
Mm-hmm. All in all, man, I like the majority of this, and I don't think they can. And the parts that I don't like, the parts that you don't like, it's just that it's our opinions of what it is and what we as your experts in college football believe it should be. But it's just our opinions. You've got a room full of other experts that are trying to figure this thing out. Is it far off? No, but I do think this bracket again solidifies you've got to move it to 16, 20 teams. Everybody says, well, you can't, 20. But if you move it to 16, then you completely remove the bye weeks. They're gone.
Yeah. Yep.
So I don't think that happens.
Well, I'm one that I don't have a problem with losing the bye week. You're still gonna balance out with your top 4 they're gonna be seeded against the bottom 4, right? In those matchups. So the bye week, as we saw last season, everybody that got a bye lost.
What if that happens again this year. Or let's just say 2 out of the 4 or 3 out of the 4 that get a bye lose. Is that going to have an effect on the committee? Are the ADs and the coaches of the world, the Kirby Smarts, the Ryan Days, the Lane Kiffins at LSU, the guys that's got pull, they've got pull in this thing. Are they going to be the ones screaming up and go, 16, no buys, I don't want it? We've proven that the buys don't work.
Athletics is a very superstitious landscape. From the player to the coach, to the athletic directors, to the fans. We all buy into tradition. We all buy into myth. We all buy into that superstition that says it's rivalry week, but it's a home game, so we're probably going to lose. Because we always lose to our rival at home. We only beat them at their house. Or I'm Ryan Day and I always lose to Michigan. Wait a minute, I broke the streak, right? Like that's where we live with this sport. So to answer your question, if we drop again 4 out of 4 bye teams, yeah, I think that they find a way. I think that they are urged to find a way to get rid of that at all costs. Don't you bring in 20 teams. You bring in enough teams that keep us where everybody plays round 1. The winners play round 2, 3, and so forth. We don't want this bye stuff anymore.
No, and I will say this, man, and we'll move on from here. Get ready to tune in for us, man. We're going to be recording this Sunday, and it's going to be, right after the official announcement happens, because the final rankings happen on Sunday. And the world of college football is going to erupt in good, bad, indifferent. It does every year. And listen to Chicken and the Dog, man, because we're going to be hitting it hard. And I'm going to try to have my producer try to knock this thing out Sunday night so it's out really quickly. So you guys can listen to the great opinions of Chicken and the Dog. Let's talk about the games. And we're going to go over, actually, before we do, I think you've got something you'd like to share, right?
I do. He sent in a pretty detailed letter, my Uncle Kenny did, where he addresses this part of the season. Things are culminating. Thanksgiving is past. His belly soreness has subsided, and now he's gearing up for the Christmas season. And he has given us all a gift today, I believe, in the form of his latest iteration. It is entitled, "The Year We Finally Admitted Chaos Runs This Sport." By mid-October, when the afternoons get shorter and the long light begins slanting sideways across the practice fields, something strange settles over the sport. You can feel it in the tailgating lots at dawn, in the nervous flutter of a fan base still pretending to be confident, in the way players walk from the bus to the locker room like men stepping into a great uncertain weather. College football, for all its myths of order and ranking and narrative, was never meant to be a polite thing. It was built for chaos. It thrives in it. And each year, when the leaves turn and the nights get cold, the game quietly slips into the truth of itself. This season will make fools of everyone. There's a kind of spiritual violence to a college football year. The hopes are too big, the heartbreak's too sudden, the margins too thin for anything resembling calm. You can spend months convincing yourself that this will be the year your team is different, only to watch a freshman third stringer on a 2-for-3 roster throw for 312 yards against you on a random Saturday night in November. The sport always finds new ways to humble you, and somehow that's what keeps us coming back. Yet in the middle of this storm, this whirling, spiteful, intoxicating chaos, there remain a few constants. Landmarks rising out of the fog. The SEC still rules the world. Notre Dame still pretends to belong. The ACC is still trying to remember its name, and their group of 5 automatic bids still floats around like a well-intentioned relic from a more innocent age, a piece of costume jewelry we all agree to compliment even though no one's wearing it out of the house. Chaos defines the sport, but even chaos has structure. The SEC and the weight of a quarter century. Spend a fall Saturday anywhere in the South, Tuscaloosa, Baton Rouge, Athens, Oxford, and you'll see the layers of time stacked on top of themselves like sediment. 25 years of dominance will do that. Children who grew up watching the SEC take national championship after national championship now have children of their own. The league isn't just the best in the country, it's a cultural force, a gravitational pull, a kind of football manifest destiny. You can look at the trophies and the draft picks, the NFL pipelines and the recruiting rankings, but that's only half the story. The real dominance lives in the unmeasurable things. The fear in an opponent's eyes walking into Jordan Hare at night. The way Georgia's hedges feel like the walls of a coliseum. The way Baton Rouge breathes different oxygen after sundown. It's in the long memories and generational grudges, in the weight of grandfathers' stories, and the way certain names, Saban, Spurrier, Meyer, Smart, walk across the landscape like gods. A quarter century of owning the postseason isn't an accident. It's hundreds of tiny choices. Who gets hired? Who gets fired? What culture gets tolerated? What ambition gets rewarded? It's the furious internal competition. The fact that if you finish fourth in the SEC West one year, you might win the national title the next. It's a region that takes the game more seriously than anyone else, with no apologies and no desire to make any. Everyone else in the country is clinging to chaos like a lifeboat. Down here, they're taming it, weaponizing it, turning it into a dynasty. The SEC thrives because it knows a secret the rest of America keeps trying to forget. In this sport, pressure is a privilege. Notre Dame, an illusion kept alive by memory. Chaos isn't just chaos isn't just unpredictable. It exposes the things we pretend not to see. And near the top of every season's rankings, there is always a name that reminds us the sport still has its illusions. Notre Dame. The Irish don't seem to abide by the same rules as everyone else. They lose games that would bury other teams. They win games that feel more nostalgic than meaningful. Their independence is framed as bold tradition, though it looks more like a clever mechanism for avoiding the weekly grind that destroys lesser mortals. And every year, somehow, some way, they float up into the playoff conversation like a helium balloon someone forgot to pop. It's not that they're bad. They're not. They're disciplined and well-coached and often good enough to beat 9 or 10 teams on their schedule. But good and playoff worthy are entirely different ideas. And in a world where national championships are now won by rosters with 45 future NFL players, Notre Dame looks like a beautifully restored car from the 1960s. Charming, iconic, and absolutely outmatched on the interstate. The Irish are unworthy, not because of talent or effort or coaching. They're unworthy because the modern sport has outgrown the mythology that sustains them. The helmets still shine, the echoes still wake, but the game has moved on. The ACC, a conference searching for itself. There was a moment, fleeting but real, when the ACC carried itself like a rising power, when Florida State belonged in every dark horse conversation, when Clemson was the sport's new empire, when Miami flirted with its old swagger and Virginia Tech still breathed fire. That moment is gone now, swallowed by a decade of missteps and misdevelopment. Today, the ACC feels like a once great southern town, the kind with boarded windows and fading murals of glory days long past. The infrastructure is still there, the stadiums, the loyal fans, the echoes of past dominance, but the energy is missing. Clemson forgot how to evolve. Florida State imploded, rebuilt, and now fights its own league office more often than its rivals. Miami is trapped in a never-ending renovation project. And the rest of the conference is filled with teams that are respectable but rarely dangerous, like old boxers who know every trick but have lost the knockout power. The fall of the ACC isn't loud or dramatic, it's slow, quiet erosion. The kind that sneaks up on you until one day you wake up and realize that a league that once terrified people now hopes merely to keep pace. The Group of Five bid, a kind gesture in a violent sport. There's something almost touching about the Group of Five playoff bid. It feels like the sport's equivalent of reserving one seat at a bar for a friend who probably won't show. It's meant to be inclusive, democratic, a nod to the soul of the game, but in reality, it's a formality, a ceremonial offering laid at the altar of fairness. The truth is harsh but simple. The gap is too big. The budgets, the recruiting, the trenches, the depth chart, everything that decides heavyweight fights belongs to the power leagues. A group of 5 team might win a moment. They will not win a season. And they will not win a tournament designed for giants. It's not a waste of time because those teams don't deserve a chance. It's a waste because the sport has outgrown the idea that all contenders are created equal. The bid is a ribbon placed on something everyone knows will not survive the first serious punch. Chaos, in the end, is the point. College football is a contradiction, a religion built on uncertainty, a culture built on hope, a tradition built on the knowledge that everything can collapse in an instant. It is the only sport where order feels like a lie and chaos feels like the truth. The SEC dominates, Notre Dame floats, the ACC searches, the group of 5 smiles through gritted teeth. But the season keeps spinning, wild and beautiful and cruel. And that, in the end, is why we watch. So give me the Red Raiders, Buckeyes, Wahoos, and the Tide. All of those other jokers are walking directly into a buzzsaw.
Wow. Kind of leaves you a little speechless, a little teary-eyed. If you're an SEC fan, which we are.
We are.
Uncle Kenny kind of solidifies that we're the greatest, and everybody should listen to your drunk Uncle Kenny. There's usually some truth into it.
He's going to be right every once in a while, but so are most broken watches.
That's right. Through his, and we're going to get in these games in just a second, but when he was talking about the group of 5, it made me think of something. And so I'm going to pose a question to you, Chicken. And here's the question. Group of 5s now versus then. He talks about they have a playoff bid and this and that. We know how that works out. But he talks about that they can't compete, because of money and this and that. They couldn't really compete when there wasn't any NIL. Your top recruits, your top 300 ESPN ranked recruits coming out of high school, the amount of those that went to a non-Power 4 conference school was slim to none. So my question is there really that much of a gap now versus then, or is it about the same still?
I think it's the same. What I think you're going to see happen is you're going to see the group of 5 turn more into a development league for the power conferences. We talk so much about the transfer portal. We talk about guys like Diego Pavia, who came from, I believe, a Division II school. If it wasn't a D2 school, then it was a group of 5. I don't remember exactly. Maybe New Mexico State. I don't remember. Chambliss at Ole Miss. These rare finds that are coming from much lesser programs. The money will eventually get to the group of 5 schools. But by the time money gets there, real money gets there, the power schools are already going to have more again. Those budgets will do nothing but swell and increase because that's where championships live. They live in the SEC. They live occasionally in the Big Ten. They're faltering in the ACC. The Big 12 is a stranger to it for quite some time now, and who knows what's going to happen with the Pac-12, 24, 2, whatever they end up at. But these other schools are just going to be that. They're going to be the other schools.
As much as I hate to say this, and we've talked about this quite a bit over the years, man, online and offline, the amount of money that these group of 5 schools get from the Power 4 conferences when we play those games, right? We've stroked them $3 or $4 million checks or $2 million checks to these people, and how much it helps fund their programs or fund other sports within the program. And so SEC going to 9 conference games, that's one less. If you take it, that's 16 less schools that are going to get that check now, right? I think that's that potentially can hurt. So, but I think you're right, man. I don't think they've ever been, I still think it's about the same, but I do think NIL and transfer portal, you could see them break off into their own little thing, like you said, and have their own national championship. Who knows? I don't know.
Well, you have that now in Division I basketball, where you've got the March Madness, the NCAA tournament, but then you've also got the NIT, which is in and of itself a national championship. It doesn't carry the same weight as winning the big dance, as they call it, in March. But it's there. And I think that it's very likely that you could end up seeing. And here's the other thing that could generate is a revitalization in some of these other bowl games that, as we sit right now, mean nothing.
That's right.
So it breathes life back into some of these other bowl games that are going to end up like some of those southern towns that Uncle Kenny was talking about, where you remember the glory days of the CarQuest Bowl, and now people are saying there's still a CarQuest Bowl.
Yeah. Y'all, you heard that first from the chicken on Chicken and the Dog. So, committee, NCAA, college football people, hire us. We can breathe perfection and wisdom and logic into your programs.
Yes, not only am I charming, but I also have a marketing degree, so I am available.
That's right. All right, let's talk about the games. We're gonna leave the Power Four conferences to last. Friday, the Sun Belt Championship happens, the old belt, and a 8-4 has to take on a number 11, not a number 11, an 11-1 number 25 James Madison. They're playing in Virginia. James Madison is favored to win that game by 23.5 points. Because I don't know a whole lot about these two schools, I'm going to have to say James Madison wins this game.
James Madison, their one loss is to Louisville this year. They went undefeated regular season in conference. I look for James Madison to pull this one out with no questions asked.
Yep. Another game that is on Friday, which is the Conference USA Championship game. You ready? And look, this is kind of a new program, new into Division I. Here we go. A 9-3 Kennesaw State from the great state of Georgia has to take on an 8-4 Jacksonville State. Two teams, again, that are not normally in this mix. They're playing in Jacksonville, Alabama. Kennesaw State is favored to win that game by 2.5 points. Over and under is 59.5. Give me Kennesaw State.
Yeah, I mean, after the start that they had when they first got into Division I football to be playing this weekend for a championship, give me Kennesaw State.
Absolutely, I like it. All right, the AAC, not Aaron, but the AAC, also known as the American Athletic Conference. Their championship game is played in New Orleans, and a number 24, 11-1 North Texas is taking on a 10-2 number 20 Tulane. North Texas is favored to win that game by 2.5 points. 66.5 is the over and under. Give me North Texas.
Give me North Texas. Summerall is gone. He's in Florida now. So Tulane is going to be marching in without their head coach. North Texas has a very dangerous offense. Their quarterback's thrown for 3,800 yards, 29 touchdowns, only 4 interceptions this year. I like the Green Machine all the way.
I do too, man. And I drive by that North Texas stadium all the time in Denton, Texas. And it's just cool, man. It's there. They got all this green stuff up everywhere. I like it. So another reason why I'm pulling for them. All right, here's another one that's playing Friday. A Mountain West Championship game. UNLV, they're 10-2, is taking on an 8-4 Boise State in Boise. Boise's favored to win that game by 4 points. Over and under 58.5. Who's the coach at UNLV?
Your boy.
Yeah. Give me Boise State.
Yeah, I was gonna go Boise State for that reason too. I think the moment might just be too big for Mr. Mullen. So let's go Broncos.
All right. On Saturday, the MAC conference, the Mid American Conference, Miami of Ohio, 7-5, has to take on Western Michigan, 8-4. Western Michigan is favored. They are playing in Michigan. Western Michigan's favored by 2.5 points, over and under 43.5. Give me Michigan, Western Michigan.
Yeah, I'm gonna go Western Michigan on that one as well.
All right. Now let's get to the group of the Power Four conferences, and we're going to start with the lesser of them, which is the ACC. So a 7-5. That's right, guys. I'm saying it. A 7-5 Duke has to take on a number 17, 10-2 Virginia. Virginia's favored by 3.5 points. They're playing in Charlotte at the Bank of America Stadium. Over and under is 57.5. I'm going to say it. I like Duke. I like Duke in this.
Wow. It is tough to beat a team twice. It happens. Your Bulldogs did it last year when they beat Texas twice. I think Virginia is able to do that again this year, and they're going to beat Duke twice. They beat them a couple of weeks ago, 34-17 in the regular season. I think that Duke wasn't able to learn enough from that lesson. I think Virginia learned how to hold on quite well in that ball game, and I like the Cavaliers in this one.
All right. The Big 12 championship game. So a 11-1, number 11, Brigham Young University, the Fighting Mormons, has to take on a number 4, 11-1 Texas Tech. They are playing in Arlington, Texas at AT&T Stadium. Texas Tech is favored to win by 12.5 points. Over and under is 49.5. I like the Red Raiders. I think they make a statement. I think that's one of the things that the Alabama fans can cross, and the Notre Dame people can breathe, a little sigh and get a little exhale that they may be okay. I think Texas Tech wins.
Rube, I don't want you to hear me wrong, but I'm afraid that you will. I just mentioned how hard it is to beat a team twice, and that's what your Red Raiders would have to do. You smoked BYU earlier in the year, 29-7. But one thing that we all know is that this time of year is, as my Uncle Kenny put it, chaotic. I look for BYU to win this ball game and begin to stir the pot of chaos soup that we know is going to happen somehow or another this weekend. I like BYU.
Wow, I did not see that coming at all from you. You usually kind of play it safe. You're more methodical. You kind of like, look, I think, I'm the one that likes to go on the limb and pull for the underdog. Hence the last word.
I don't see this as a pick against the Red Raiders. I don't see it as a pick for the BYU Cougars. I see this as an understanding of chaos, and something's going to happen that's going to throw us all off, where Sunday evening there's going to be nothing but chatter and debate. I think that this is the first domino to fall.
It could be. If I'm going to pick an upset in this, I think this is the one that's going to the upset, because this changes everything. Well, the Duke and the Virginia game, that changes a lot too. But this is the other one that just changes everything. On to the Big Ten championship. So in number 2, 12-0 Indiana, the Fighting Mendozas, has to take on a number 1 Ohio State. They're 12-0. 2 undefeated teams. Great season to both of you. But you have to play in Indiana. Ohio State is favored by 4.5 points. We're under 47.5. Give me Indiana.
Ooh, okay. So here we okay. Now I'm gonna back this up with one game. Penn State. Indiana squeaked past Penn State. Indiana squeaked past a Penn State that was well deflated by the time they made it to face each other on the gridiron. Ohio State was not challenged by Penn State. Both teams played the Nittany Lions after Coach Franklin had been dismissed. I think Ohio State is on such a tear this year that I don't think that it's going to be the Hoosiers that present them with their match. I like the Buckeyes big in this game.
Ooh, big. All right, that leaves one game left, and it's fitting to talk about the greatest conference in college football and talk about their championship game last. You saved the best for last. So a 11-1 number 3 Georgia has to take on a 10-2 number 9 Alabama. Georgia's favored to win that game by 2.5 points. Over and under is 47.5. You talk about playing a team twice in the same season. How hard is that to do? Yes, Georgia did it last year to Texas. Georgia does not play Alabama well in Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta. We don't. The history of the last 6 or 7, 8 years proves we just don't do it well. However, Kirby has to get over this hump. He's got to fight this thing that's that people hold over his head and whatever. I think that is done this weekend. I don't think it's by 2.5 points. I think it's by a touchdown. Give me Georgia. Give me the Bulldogs. Gunnar Stockton shows up. The defense is too much for Ty Simpson. Let me say this one more thing, too, before we go there. If there's one thing that I think we can all agree upon is that Auburn, the War Eagle Tigers, have a great defense, a very solid defense. That's what held them in that game last weekend against Alabama. I think that holds true. This game, I think Georgia's defense is going to be the difference maker.
I will add, I think that not only Auburn does have a good defense. I don't want to take away from them. However, that's a rivalry game. And like we talk about all the time, rivalry games just play different. You can be 0-11 and go into rivalry week and play like a champ and only lose by 3. You can lay an egg and go into rivalry week against your opponent, your rival, who's not having that great a year themselves, and make it look close, South Carolina. And you still come out with the L. I don't put too much on that, but I will look back at the head-to-head. Yes, they've played each other already this season. It is hard to beat a team twice. That loss for Georgia was by a field goal, 24-21. So that's as close to a push as you're going to get in modern college football. This is a tough one for me to call. It's going to be packed red in Mercedes-Benz Arena, but there's going to be some crimson in there too. I think that I'm going to switch I like Alabama in this game. I think that Alabama finds a way to win late. I think that it's going to be back and forth. I think it's going to be an absolute slugfest between these two schools. I think, you mentioned Ty Simpson. I think that Ty Simpson and Gunnar Stockton are both great quarterbacks in their own right. But there's something about Ty Simpson that says calm under pressure, where Gunnar Stockton is a gunslinger. He's going to come at you with everything that he's got on every play, and sometimes that leads to mistakes. I like Alabama. I like Ty Simpson in this game.
Let me ask you this, because I think this could play a factor in it. Alabama knows they have to win this game. If they win the game, they're in. Georgia, they can lose, and they're in. They're not going to move the number 3 team out of it. It's not going to happen. They're not going to punish them that far, right? But Alabama has to win this game. Does that mindset play a huge factor in the outcome of this game?
For Alabama, yes. Against Georgia, no, because they're not built that way. Kirby Smart is not built that way to say, let's just drop it down into cruising gear and just get through this week. Gunnar Stockton, and this is the difference that I think that actually is the detriment of Gunnar Stockton in this game. I love this kid. He's a great quarterback. He's the kind of quarterback that we all want at our school, meaning what? He puts his team on his back. He does whatever he has to do to pick up that yard. His helmet popped off last season, and he's looking around not to figure out where he is, but to figure out where his helmet is, because he's not worried about the rule that you got to come off the field. He's ready for the next snap. This kid will put life and limb in jeopardy to move that ball down the field. Georgia is not built to take a week off, so they're gonna come in this game to win. But yes, I think for Alabama, knowing that they have to win to keep going, I think it gives them that extra motivation. And like I said, I think that it could come down to a moment where, not that he necessarily throws an interception, but it's just a little bit too much effort and not enough head to try and win a ball game, to try and convert a first down that maybe gets Gunnar Stockton and the Bulldogs in trouble. I think that this is another close victory, but I think Alabama just has that calm, steady hand to win this one.
So you're like comparing Ty Simpson to like a Tom Brady, where a Gunnar Stockton is more like a Brett Favre.
Yeah, that's exactly what I would do. A Brett Favre, or in modern NFL football, maybe a Baker Mayfield, where you know the guy's going to give you everything he's got, and somehow he's going to find a way to give you more. But sometimes I can get you into just a little bit of trouble, or just enough trouble for the other team to come out on top.
I meant to say this earlier and got distracted, but Reese Davis yesterday, they had the committee commissioner on after they did the announcement and showed us what the new rankings look like, and Reese Davis asked the question: are the teams that are in, could they be punished by losing a conference championship? And his response was, next week there'll be new rankings. And that's it. And he left it at that. And Reese, like, that's what I thought you would say. I get that. But I think you can be punished. I think Alabama could be punished if they were to drop this game to Georgia. But look, man, we'll see. It's hard to believe that conference championships are here. It's sad, but yet it's been an exhausting year. It's been some crazy stuff. It's been a joyful year in a lot of ways, man. We've seen some really, really great football. Seen some really good surprise teams. It's great to have an Indiana relevant. It's great to have a Texas Tech relevant. So it's strange not having an ACC team relevant this year. That's a little on the strange side. So goofy year, fun year for most. But anyway, look, guys, like us, subscribe to us, follow us on all our social media, all the platforms, all the podcast platforms. Tell your friends, tell your neighbors, tell someone. Chicken, you got anything?
Jesus won, and I am all crowed out.
All right, guys, I love you. Deuces.